Hey everyone, it's Hannah. I wanted to quickly ask if you are enjoying the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. It goes a long way in getting the show in front of other listeners. If you listen on a platform that doesn't do reviews, please follow us on social media, like the show, or leave a comment. Thank you. We love you guys, and we hope you enjoy the show. You're listening to The Tales We Tell, a podcast about spooky stories, unsolved mysteries, and local lore. I'm your host, Hannah Parch.
And I'm Katy.
Welcome back.
We survived Ophelia.
I know! I truly did not know she was coming until the day before.
Well, she wasn't a she until basically the day before.
That's true.
Like the day of. Because, yeah, she was unnamed up until, like, still, like, on Friday. I think, like, Friday morning.
She was just a tropical...
Maybe it was
she was
sometime later on Friday morning she had a name.
Yeah, because they don't name tropical depressions, right?
Mm-mm.
And then, I don't know the difference between a tropical depression and a tropical storm.
Faster wind speeds.
Do they name tropical storms?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, because she never turned into a hurricane.
Yeah.
That's
Why did
right.
I say I think so? Duh. My brain is not firing on all the cylinders. I'm hungry, so that's going to be my excuse.
Just offered to find food in our fridge for you, and Jarek offered it in a very weird way. He's like, "Do you want me to look through our fridge and see if I can
find something for you?" And I'm like,
scrounge up some food for you.
Well, if it's that dire here that you have to, like, find food, I'm not going to take whatever morsels of food you apparently have.
We actually do have, like, 3 huge bags of turkey, because he took our, last year we got an extra turkey when they were, like, you know, $0 a pound, at Thanksgiving. And it's just been in our freezer, and he finally cooked it, and then cut it all up and put it in bags, so we've just been eating
Lots of turkey.
Thanksgiving turkey. So there is that, if you want it.
Well, maybe I'll take some and try and give it to Critter, because I told you that, you know, because his diet is so bad.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that bad. He's still getting nutrients, and he eats more, or he's more likely to eat stuff at school than at home. But I've been cooking dinner, which is really difficult to do when it's just me and a toddler that really wants my attention. But I've cooking dinner, get him in his high chair, and actually, like, cut my food up and put it on his plate, like, so that he watches me put food from my plate to his plate, then give it to him. And so he sees, like, we're eating the same thing.
Yeah.
And there's been several nights that he's gone to bed hungry, and I hate it. It kills my soul.
Yeah.
But this week, I made some pork chops.
Oh, okay. Famously one of my least favorite foods.
I don't like pork. I don't like ham. I really don't like ham.
Oh, that's weird. I love ham.
I don't like ham.
I like most other kinds of pork.
But I'll eat a pork chop just fine if it's done well. I mean, I brined it and everything. Ooh. Like, it's not like these are good quality chops either. They're cheap chops. But I brined it, you know, I made a brine with some salt and, you know, some herbs and peppercorns and let them soak in their brine for hours. And then I just covered with, like, Parmesan and panko and then fried it in a skillet. And I was like, you know, maybe it'll look a little bit like dino nuggets because it's fried like that. Sure enough, he took a couple of bites. So he didn't eat the green beans or the carrots. Of course.
Can't expect everything.
But I did get him to eat a little bit of pork. So hopefully he'll be turning a corner on trying new things. But
I'll get there. I listened to an episode of Ologies recently that was about taste. That's the most recent one that's out. And I wasn't listening too carefully because it was during my cleaning of this room that we just discussed was not super thorough and was distracted. And they said, I know they mentioned something about, like, there's an age where something about taste changes for kids. I don't know.
Well, your tastes change. And I think they actually change throughout your life, too. Because there's things that, like, I used to, like, really hate carrots for a while. Like, I used to not have a problem with them as a kid. Hated them for a few years in, like, my early adolescence, early adulthood. And then now I'm like, yeah, carrots are fine.
Yeah, I used to hate cooked carrots, and now I love them.
Same.
And broccoli? I used to hate broccoli. It's like my favorite vegetable now.
I love broccoli. And Brussels sprouts. Oh my gosh.
I still can't get on board with Brussels sprouts.
You gotta do them the right way. Because if you just like boil them...
Yeah. And I don't think... I like
roasted.
I like the smell of them. Like that, there's a Brussels sprout salad, I think that the Chelsea does.
Yep.
And I have smelled that thing so many times, and it smells so good. And I know I've had Brussels sprouts that I like. I've never successfully made them well, and that has discouraged me, because it's like, once I try them well, like good, tasting good, and then I try them and they're bad, I'm like, bleh, I don't like them anymore. It's like, yeah, it's gross.
Well, next time we have a dinner party, I'll make Brussels so that you can have some that you like.
Okay, good. Well, I have a couple announcements, really quick. Okay, so the first one I already told you about, which is, but I'm going to put it on the air because I told Hannah Cox that I would. So in our Denver airport episode, which I don't even remember what we were talking about, apparently...
I think it was a mural and, like, the colors and everything.
Okay. But apparently you were trying to remember the name of a Taylor Swift album. My friend Hannah, she co-hosted one of our episodes while you were out, and I don't remember which one. She is a Swiftie, and she called me in the middle of listening to that episode and told me she was screaming the name of the album in the car.
Irate.
So the name of the album was Lover, in case anyone else out there knew that and was also screaming it. Hannah has my number, so she can just call me up and tell me. But yeah, that's that correction.
Thanks.
I guess.
Because I enjoy Taylor Swift as not like an enigma, but like as a fixture.
Yeah.
Like, not even as like an actual person, which I understand, yes, she's still a person, but like Taylor Swift, the
idea.
The very business savvy superstar.
Yes.
'Cause I don't know Taylor Swift the person.
Yeah.
I don't care enough to try to get to know the person. Even though I know that she is very personable with fans and, loves her fans, and that's cool. But, like, some of her just business savvy tactics. Like, I read one story that, this was, like, in the height of her Girl Squad era, because everything's an era now, because she's also a tastemaker.
Yeah, she, creates...
And that's the thing that's fascinating.
It's insane.
Like, she's very impressive in my mind because of that business savvy and like just understanding how like society works and like making trends and staying on top of things and like
she crashed Google. Did you know that? No. I recently learned that because she worked with them to put out some kind of puzzles or whatever, alluding to I don't know.
She loves the Easter eggs. But she loves putting out clues and
apparently. Elon Musk then asked her or suggested that she release some of her content directly to X. And everyone was like, basically what you just did. Like, and they were like, he's trying to get that Google shit to happen for him. Yeah. It's not going to happen, man.
Anyway. Oh, but yeah, Girl Squad. She posted some like selfies of her with her Girl Squad when they were like partying on a yacht or something.
Yeah.
And... most people would be like, oh, great, more pictures. A lot of people are like, way to, like, flaunt your lifestyle and whatnot and whatever. But the reason that she did that was because she saw paparazzi taking pictures.
Oh.
And she's like, we were just trying to have fun. Like, I think there was no intention of posting those photos until they saw the paparazzi taking photos.
Yeah.
And like... all right, well, screw you guys.
We'll post these
pictures
for free.
Therefore, making all of your photos completely useless.
Yeah,
and
that's actually
like,
great. That's a great idea. Yeah,
I was like, yes, so smart because just leave them alone.
Yeah, leave them alone.
Take the pictures for like appearances, like when she's going to a premiere or before a concert. Don't stalk people for their personal lives and like society. Stop being so obsessed with celebrities in their
creepy.
private lives.
Yeah. And,
but I thought that was really smart, and I started respecting a lot of her other business decisions and stuff like that.
Yeah. She's very
savvy
and interesting.
But I cannot name all of her albums. I do enjoy some of her music.
Yeah, I think her music is great.
Some more so than others. Like, I don't care for the earlier when she was in country music. Mm-hmm. I like the pop music. Some albums I like a lot better than others.
I'll always say that I almost got to meet her because she came to my high school when I was I think a junior. When it was right when that Tim McGraw song came out, like right when she was whatever, and the cheerleaders at our high school won a local radio contest. And so Taylor Swift came to Athens Drive High School in Raleigh, North Carolina, and she played like a little mini concert in the auditorium where now I go to church when I'm up at my parents' house. Interesting, I never thought of that. But it was like classic little, like she still had her curls and sometimes I think that's a dream. It's not.
It happened.
I didn't meet her, but like I went to an intimate concert of hers. Yeah. I can say I went to a Taylor Swift concert.
There you go.
I just realized that. Oh my gosh. Okay. My next announcement, you don't know about this one because it just happened last night. We have a new patron.
Yay! Welcome to the family.
Her name is Dorothy.
Dorothy.
Which is one of my favorite names.
It's my mother-in-law's name.
It's my grandmother's name. It's what I hope to name
my grandmother-in-law's name.
Yeah. It's what I hope to name my future daughter.
Mm-hmm. Can I call her Dot?
Our patron or my child?
Both.
Yes.
But mostly your child.
Yes. That is the plan, is for her to go by Dot or Dottie. Because that's what my grandmother went by. Anyways, thank you, Dorothy. I sent you a message, Dorothy, if you're listening, on Patreon, so check your email. And I need your address. Not in a creepy way, but to send you some goodies. Yeah. So yeah. Hello, Dorothy. I said this in the note too. I was like, you picked a great series of episodes to get your shout out on. This is just, we're going to get into it.
Let's do it.
My last announcement is just for people to check out I don't even want to call that an interview, what we did. It was
like just a sit-down chat.
Yeah. So it's on Newbern Live. Mm-hmm. So I think the easiest way is to either get on Facebook or they have a website.
Yeah, I haven't checked to see if the video has been uploaded to their website or not yet, but it's definitely available to watch on Facebook. Yeah. And it's just like the image. So like for a while you're like, oh, there's no video because it's not live anymore. No, you gotta like wait a few minutes,
scroll a little bit,
and then it starts.
Yeah, and it's about an hour, and it was so fun to do, and I'm so glad that it was the way it was because I was nervous, but it felt like just being on another podcast, so it was nice.
Well, I was thinking about it later, and I was like, it was so funny. Like I really wanted to try and not take the back seat or anything, but like, give you, the opportunity to like, this is your podcast. It's our podcast, but really it's kind of yours. And like, I wanted, like you to, take the spotlight, but I could tell that you were really nervous.
I was really nervous.
And also when we do our episodes, like there's recorded structure.
Yeah.
And it's like you know what needs to be said, like you're ready, whereas I'm also very practiced in giving interviews and like kind of talking off the cuff, and then every episode is me off the cuff because I have no idea. So like us going in there was like normal for me, and
reversed for me,
reversed for you, and so I was like, okay, I'll stop and talk a little bit
I was more. So concerned with not what I looked like on camera, but with my face, because I didn't...
What do I do with my hands?
Well, yeah, what do I do with my hands? Thank God I brought my water with me, because I was just, like, constantly reaching for it. But I'm very self-conscious. I don't want my face to ever look... Like, I don't want to make the wrong facial expression.
Like that one?
Yeah, or this one. I mean, this is why I love this picture of us, because I look like I'm scowling at someone off camera.
See, you have more closely resting bitch face. Or maybe resting judgy face.
Yeah.
I have resting derp face.
It's so cute, though.
You say so.
So I was really focused on, like, don't let my face betray anything stupid. And then I was also very conscious of, like, this is live, so it's not like here where if we say
censored.
something stupid, we can be like, Jarrett, cut that out. Yeah. So, anyways. And the last thing I will bring up, which you already pointed out, is we have some new additions to our studio.
Yeah, we've redecorated a little.
I have framed some of our best mugshots, and I almost want to rearrange them because the mic...
So you put your boy in the center, huh?
Well, I couldn't figure out a better way to arrange that.
Oh, I mean, it works.
Yeah. I want to rearrange it, though, because currently the way that I sit when I'm looking at you, I keep catching Marvin. Okay, so for everyone who's listening...
Yeah, and not looking at our studio.
I'll take a picture. I hung up 5 of, in my opinion, the best mugshots from last week. Mm-hmm. So we have Ted Cole, Ralph Rowe, Sam Shockley, James Borman, and Marvin Hubbard, a.k.a. Dermot Mulroney.
Yeah. We really need to post a side-by-side.
We should. I'll just get another one. I'll take the profile. What am I trying to say? The profile. Yeah, the profile view, and replace that with a picture of Dermot. Anyways, when I look at you, I keep catching Marvin. Who I would like to be looking at. Mm-hmm.
I don't blame you for wanting to, like, make eye contact with him over me. It's fine.
I mean, I would love to be making eye contact all the time with Ted. I think he has, listen, the grasp that picture has on my soul.
He gives me, like, dark romance book boyfriend vibes. Mm-hmm. Like the, like, touch her and die kind of. Yeah. Maybe not quite that, like, dark and intense, but, like, I'm a tough guy, but, like, don't mess with my girl.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
I feel like
he seems like, oh, you know, you got this, you can handle it, go get him, baby. But also, like, I'll step in if I need to.
I actually have a little bit more information on him and Ralph, just because it came up organically. Did it? But I don't know. I feel like I'm just seeing him. I feel like he's imprinted on me. I don't know what's happening. Maybe I should leave him over there so I can't see him.
Maybe you knew him in a past life.
Listen, don't tease me. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you my main source for this episode was a book called Escape from Alcatraz by J. Campbell Bruce. I have since purchased a hard copy of that book. Second book I have purchased for this series. Also, I have a small confession to make.
Let's hear it.
This might be, and by might be, I mean will be, a 3-part episode. I'm so sorry! I'm so sorry!
I was worried that for somehow you were going to tell me that, like, a baby died or something.
Oh, no. No babies die.
No, I can handle most of your confessions.
Yeah, I guess usually I do say, oh, a bunch of children die in this. No. No children die. And I want to explain, I want to call it part 1.5, but really it's more of like a prequel to the prequel by accident.
Wait, hold on.
Well, let me explain how I got here. So I was like, okay, great. We're ready to move right on to the main event.
Which is now being pushed back a week.
Yes. And I was like, well, let me just go in a little bit. Okay, let me back up some more. When I'm reading books for episodes, right, I'm not a slow reader, but I'm not a super fast reader. And so a lot of times, like a book like this one was not just focused on that one escape. It's a comprehensive information on all of Alcatraz and the inmates or whatever. It's, in my opinion, very good. So usually with stuff like that, I can skim through and like know which stuff that I can skip and just kind of get right to the subject matter that I need. I was starting to do that, and then I was like, well, all of this extra stuff I feel is very interesting and very important to include. So I was like, well, I'll just start by I'll just go back and explain again. The header that I have here is expansion on why I am Team Escaped Inmates, aka more on why Alcatraz was awful. And I thought that was just going to be a small intro part, and it turned into the whole...
No, you've turned it into an actual essay.
I do
You joked last week about wanting to write an essay, basically like a book report.
I know. I do have some... Listen, I got a good dossier for you.
Did it. Okay, well...
I have a couple so-so mugshots, but I have, one solid gold one. And then I have a couple good, stories throughout.
As long as they're on the level of Ted Cole, James Borman, and Marvin Hubbard.
Wow, you really did Ralph and Sam dirty.
They're not my favorites.
Ralph? First of all...
I mean, he's got a fun little, mischievous little smirk.
Yeah, he looks so friendly.
Looks like he's, the...
You'd let him in your house.
The clown of the... or... his, of the crew, he's the one that's always, joking around and being silly and having fun.
He does look really friendly.
Yes. That's probably why you would let him in your house, or apparently a bank, because he was a bank robber, right?
I think he was very charming. Yes. Mm-hmm. I think.
He's got, that goofy guy. He reminds me of, and he looks a little bit like him, too, Jason Segel. He has, that Marshall Erickson vibe.
Oh, I love Jason Segel. Mm-hmm. All right, well...
Kind of a dick in real life.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh no, I hate that.
I mean, I don't know. Because, these are stories that, you read, and some people are like, oh, this celebrity was awful. And then the other person's like, well, really? Because I met the celebrity and they were great. And it's people are allowed to have bad days.
Yeah,
and again,
true.
Going back, society needs to, they are people. Leave them alone. They do not owe you any part of their lives.
Can I put forth another celebrity comparison for him?
Yes, please. And this is, again, Ralph Rowe that we're talking about.
Yeah, sorry.
So go back to last week's Instagram post.
So sorry, everyone. Paul Rudd. Giving me Paul Rudd vibes.
The smirk? The little half smile?
Yeah, I don't know.
I can see a little bit.
Also, I wouldn't be surprised to find out that he's 47.
Yeah.
And just Paul Rudd's an age, so... I don't know. I don't know what we're talking about.
We got way off there.
Okay.
Maybe hanging these mugshots were actually a bad idea.
That's what I said.
We do not need a whole episode just diving into the personalities that we assign to them based on one single photo.
No, so bad. So, when I'm... No, this is great. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about them. Okay. All right, I have a quote that I'm going to start with. And this is straight from the book by Mr. Bruce. Alcatraz held to the principle of punishment, not reformation, with nothing to gain by obedience to the rules and everything to lose by their violation. Mm-hmm. And I think that sums up perfectly what I have
a lot of prisons
problem with.
Yep.
Because that shouldn't ever be the situation.
Because, again, like he said, it's not about reformation, but even if, when good behavior is not rewarded.
Yeah.
Good behavior is rewarded in society, in real life. A lot of times good behavior also isn't rewarded. It's just because it's just expected.
Exactly.
But, I don't know.
And I feel like I keep going back to this idea of okay, well, what are you expecting? It's if you are if you're going into it with this idea of, I'm just going to punish you, you can't do anything to gain my good favor. You can only do things that are going to get you punished.
What's the point?
What are you expecting that person, you were either expecting to break their will completely.
It's negative reinforcement.
Yeah. You're either going to break their will completely, which I'm sure is what they're hoping for, or you're going to make them fucking angry at you.
Yes. Think about, you've got a job, and you go... and you are on time every single day. You've never been late. And obviously you're not getting rewarded for that because you're supposed to.
Yeah.
But one day you're late, and things are beyond your control. It's not even your fault that you're late. Doesn't matter. You get big time punished. And you're seriously? My previous history of being on time isn't going to get me even a little bit of lenience. It doesn't matter if I've always, done what I'm supposed to, been here on time. If you're going to just really punish me for this one infraction, you know what, screw it. I'm not gonna work hard to, be here on time. Like, I'm just gonna accept my punishment. Well, if I'm late, I'm late. Oh, well.
Yeah, and again, the whole point of advocating for prisons being places for rehabilitation and reformation instead of just punishment is that, like, eventually a lot of these people, even if they have life sentences, are going to get paroled or will be back in society at some point. And if you have not taught them that they can trust people, like, if all you have taught them is that life is the absolute worst and everyone...
that the system is broken.
Yeah, and that everyone hates them and everyone's out to get them and that they are worth nothing, then...
Why try?
Why are you surprised that they are going out there and repeating the same, like, mistakes? A
lot of people, honestly, in some circumstances, prison's actually a better setup than their home life. They've got a stable place to live, 4 walls and a roof. They get 3 meals a day. They get to socialize. Actually, like, again, it's not ideal, but still better than some situations not in prison.
Yeah. Well, and like
some people don't have a place to live. Some people don't have a stable place to live.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have 3 meals a day.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of
people.
I mean, I should have done I shouldn't have. I really got to get off this.
Stop. We might have to cut a lot of this.
But, like, I know a lot of prisons nowadays offer the chance for inmates to, like, get degrees, get, like, your associates or your bachelor's, and that's not something that they may have had the chance to do outside of it, and they're already going to be faced once they're released.
Got, like, work release programs.
Yeah.
Like, look at Pit Bulls and Parolees. It's a popular TV show. That was working with... for prison reform.
Yeah, it just... Okay. We're on point 1. Good grief.
We might have to, like, cut all of that and be like, for the unabridged rant, we'll put it at the end of the episode.
Possibly. I mean, it's just... That's the theme of
this is what we pay Jarek for.
This is true.
Let's keep this week.
I mean, it's gonna keep coming up. Okay, so some of the rules... and a lot of these were more strict in the very early days of Alcatraz, which I think we said was 34 is when it was... Which I can go back very quickly.
You're the one who has the book.
I know! 1934 is when it was established as, like, a regular prison. Okay, so they were really strict early on. They relaxed a little bit on the rules later on, but, like, for the most part, these are the rules.
Well, they're probably very regimented since it was a military prison.
Well, this is after it's...
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay.
Like,
well, these are like...
started out with the rules, and then when it turned to a regular prison...
These are rules they made specifically for it being a high-security prison. And these, I think, are Warden Johnston's, like...
Warden Dumbass?
Yeah. We love him. Just kidding.
Warden incite a riot?
All right. First rule. No talking. You literally could not talk.
This is basically solitary, but seeing people.
Yeah, unless it was absolutely necessary. So you could talk to ask someone to pass the salt at mealtime or, like, to ask a guard to open a door for you. Other than that, it was absolutely silent. And they said, like, it was creepy. Like, there was just no talking in the prison.
Yeah, that is creepy.
Okay, as we go through these, I want everyone to think of, like, what is the point behind these rules? There's no fucking point to not letting people talk.
I mean, I'm thinking about times I've been in detention where, like, everyone's spread out at their own table. Like, you can do homework, you can sit there. That's it. You can't talk to anybody. Because if you do, more trouble. And so, it's not creepy because most people are studying or working on homework or something. But, I mean... it did make sense to me.
And...
It's I know you don't want to let people talk because then it becomes social hour and not detention and not a punishment. But... maybe no talking works for, like, an hour-long detention.
Yeah.
Not for,
again,
an entire prison sentence.
Yeah, for an hour or two. I mean, we used to have silent lunch in, like, elementary school or whatever. And that was a punishment. And it's like, yeah, okay, I get silence is a punishment for a block of time. Not telling people that they can't talk to the people that they're living with. A lot of these people for 50 years. Okay. Another rule was no leaving uneaten food on your plate at mealtime. So whatever food you put on your plate, you had to finish it. And if you didn't, you got in trouble. So I hope you liked what you got, and I hope you were not feeling ill that day. There was no commissary here, which I guess is not super surprising, but just no additional things that they could
There's no privileges.
They were allowed tobacco because it's the 30s. Except in solitary confinement because that was considered a punishment, so they took that away. They were not allowed to fraternize during rec time. And I think, is a little unclear, but I think they only got rec time for 2 hours on Sundays.
Ooh.
I know. They may have gotten it every day because I feel like later I read that was like a federal regulation that they had to.
Yeah.
But
now I understand, like, not fraternizing or like maybe making the no talking rule during rec time because that's when people are allowed to group up. That's when like gangs and whatnot can form.
Yeah. So during rec time, you might think, well, what can I do? You can walk around. You can stand. You could play softball if you wanted to, but that was...
Only if you mimed, let's pick up a game of softball.
That was closely supervised by guards so that they could stifle any competitiveness because, God forbid, you have any ounce of
humanity,
joy at playing a game. They're like, you can play a game, but you can't have fun while you're doing it. So, like, don't try. If the weather was bad, because remember, this is Chicago. Or, sorry, this is not Chicago. This is San Francisco. About? This is San Francisco.
Where's your brain?
My brain is with Teddy Cole somewhere. I don't know. In Chicago. This is San Francisco. So if the weather was bad, which, like, it could get bad because they're on the bay. I was thinking windy weather. That's, to be fair, that's where my brain was. If the weather was bad, they didn't get any rec time. So they would talk about, like, if the weather was bad that weekend, you were just inside all weekend.
Yeah, I know about being inside all weekend.
Yeah, so that's
actually. Yeah, no. As soon as it stopped raining, like, basically Walker woke up from his nap yesterday, and it had stopped raining, and I was like, we're going for a stroll. We were getting out of this house.
They were allowed to attend a religious service on Sunday if they wanted to. However, if they did, the time that they spent at the religious service was deducted from their rec time. So they were allowed to read. They got library materials, but those were censored. Love some censored reading material. Visitors were allowed once a month, and your visitors were only allowed to be relatives or lawyers. Oftentimes, the strict rules that the visitors had to adhere to would discourage them from coming. Like, a lot of these inmates were not from the area, right? They were sent there because they had escaped from other prisons, and so they were, their families were back in, like, Oklahoma. And so a lot of times their families couldn't afford to get out to San Francisco and see them.
Yeah.
And then there was a story about, like, Al Capone's mother went to visit him, and just all of the security stuff, and I'm sure she was elderly, but all of the security trying to get in, like, she had to take off her corset because it had metal boning in it. And then once you got there, what am I thinking of? Like, the windows that you talk through, you had to talk really loudly. And so she was talking too quietly, and they were, like, shouting at her to talk loudly. And then they said you can only speak in English because they wanted to know everything you're saying. You couldn't have any, like, private conversations. And they said she never came back after that because she was just so put off by everything.
Yeah, I don't blame her, honestly.
Well, I mean, Al Capone, not the best. Yeah. Inmates could send 2 letters a week, and they could receive 7 letters. When they were sending out letters, they could only write on one side of the paper. I'm not sure why. All of their correspondence had to be vetted by the FBI, and they said that also kind of was off-putting to some people, and so like if I don't know, if your girlfriend didn't want to be checked out by the FBI, she might be like, never mind, I'm not going to write you while you're in there because I didn't like you that much.
Don't really feel like having all of my personal letters read and analyzed.
I mean,
because they're probably looking for like codes and whatnot.
Yes,
like,
that was the other thing.
It snowed on Tuesday, which means, you know, cocaine delivery or something like that. I don't know. I've seen movies.
Well, they weren't allowed to reference anyone by nicknames or initials, I guess for code reasons. All of the mail incoming and outgoing was censored, which discouraged any, like, personal or intimate conversations. So again, like, no talking. You can't have any friendships or relationships with the people you're living with.
Yeah, like,
and you can't
the prisoners literally have nothing to say. They're like, woke up, didn't say a word.
Yeah.
Ate breakfast. Ate all of it. It was a biscuit and eggs. Yeah. Wish I had gotten some sausage,
some
too.
Protein, yeah.
Spent 2 hours in the rec yard.
I noticed that this one guard
read a book.
Parted his hair differently. I read a book. 5 pages were missing. Missed a big part of the plot.
Imagining the same will be tomorrow.
Yes. But yeah.
Love you, miss you.
So it's like they're discouraging them from maintaining relationships outside of prison. They're discouraging them from creating relationships inside the prison. So the last thing about the letters, if part of the letter was suspect, they wouldn't cut it out. They would just type up the whole letter, give the prisoner the typed letter, and then they would keep the original because they thought, quote, it could be saturated with dope. Which is a clever thing I never thought of doing. I mean, I don't think too hard on, like, ways to sneak drugs into prisoners, but I guess that's one way to do it.
There's that episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. They were getting the drugs into the prison with soap.
Really?
Was it Blizz, I think? I think Blizz.
I don't know. I will say, even with all of these strict regulations, like, I am pretty fascinated that some things still made it. Like, that all of the stuff that we have ever talked about and will talk about were able to happen. In addition to all of the strict rules, inmates also had to follow a strict and mundane daily schedule. So it had no variation and no room for variation. One former inmate, whose name is Brian Conway, said, quote, men slowly go insane under the exquisite torture of routine. Which, write a book. I think he wrote an article about it, but that's just a beautiful way of saying that. He also said that in his last year at Alcatraz, 14 inmates went, quote, violently insane, and men would do almost anything to break the monotony. Like you were saying, just anything to change just the everyday, like everything is the same. Some of them would make pets out of the mice that were in their cells. There was one account of a guy who had a pet lizard. Which, sure. There were also rats, but they said they didn't really make pets of the rats because gross. They also...
Rats are cute.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not.
Pet rats are adorable.
Prison rats are not.
Yeah, pet rats are adorable, not prison rats.
Prison rats.
Like Prison Mike. Not adorable.
Not adorable. They also made various kinds of alcohol, which the first kind was milk and gasoline. I'm not sure how anyone drank that and kept it inside their body for long. That's
something I want to research now.
I don't know why you would choose milk to mix that with, too. You couldn't mix it with something a little bit less creamy. Milk is... I hate creamy alcoholic drinks. Like, they're just not my thing. And, I don't know, if you're going to mix a really foul, non-potent alcohol with it. And then another one they made was pruno, which was raisins and dried fruit and yeast. So, prison wine. Which we can pretend that's what we're drinking, but this wine is really good. I was going to say.
I should have gotten, though, like a 17 crimes or 19 crimes,
Oh,
whatever.
yeah. Well, you know what? I'll get some for next week since we're...
Yeah, since
we'll
we're
still be on it.
continuing the train.
And then another former inmate whose name is Al Loomis said, quote, "Life gets so monotonous, you feel like bucking the rules to break the monotony." So again, I feel like this is set up. They're setting them up to fail. Yeah, it's like, we're going to give you no resources. We're going to take everything away from you. And we're going to expect you to either break psychologically, or we're going to pretend to be surprised when you, like, do something violent or
just break the rules.
So, when you did break the rules, the punishment was usually solitary. And this was a little confusing because we talked last week about how there was the solitary cell block, which was D block. But then there was also, like, punishment solitary, which was called the dungeon. It's also called the deep hole, but that sounds... We're not going to call it the deep hole because we already did an episode on the deep hole.
Couple of holes.
A lot of really deep holes. So the dungeon was a series of basement cells. They had brick walls that were painted black, and they were often damp due to the proximity of the old water cisterns. According to Warden Johnston, the cells were poorly constructed, unsafe, and easy to dig out of. I made a typo and said die out of, but I think that's ironic. And because of this, they would often chain the men up inside of them, like a literal f***ing dungeon. Wow. Yeah. No light got into the cells, so they're already completely dark. They've painted the walls black to make them more dark. And it's damp, and you are possibly chained to the wall. And it's the 1930s, by the way, not like the 1590s. I don't know what time.
Probably feels the same.
There was no furniture. Men were given only a blanket and made to sleep on the floor. I also read that usually when they were put in there, they were first stripped of all their clothes, so they went in naked, and then usually their clothes were like tossed in later. I think they would search their clothes really well and then toss them in later, but they went in completely naked. The only thing that they had in there was a bucket that was used as a toilet, and that was not changed regularly. So you're going into a dark, damp, cold place that smells like a sewer with no clothes and a blanket. But according to the warden, don't worry, because no one was ever kept in the dungeon for more than 19 days without being taken out and given a shower for a day and then being put back in.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
No.
It wasn't just like 19 days. That was just as long as you could go without being given at least one day to come out and have a shower, and then you could go right back in.
Unacceptable.
And this is like a federal prison that the government is funding. All right. Well, are you ready for a picture at least?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Look at your dossier.
Oh, and a delightful picture.
I know.
Whitey.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you first about Whitey. The next one down there, his name got cut off, but his name is Tex Luther.
I like Tex.
I know. I forgot what his first name is, but Tex is a nickname, obviously. All right. So Whitey Phillips, Burton Whitey Phillips. He was serving a life sentence at Alcatraz for bank robbery and kidnapping. And I did want to make a point in this episode to, like, look a little bit deeper into, I don't just want to say bank robbery and kidnapping, because,
as we discussed previously, there's different levels.
There's different levels, right? So, for example, for Whitey, so he stole $2,090 from a Kansas bank, which is approximately $44,000, which is not a small amount of money, right? He also kidnapped the cashier and his assistant during this bank robbery, and he drove them off in a stolen car. So he's also stolen a car, and he drives them down a back road. But once he got a certain distance away, he let them both out. He didn't harm them, right? But he got arrested for this. And because when he drove along that back road, he had crossed a state line. It made his robbery and kidnapping charge a federal offense. And so even though this was his first offense, he didn't have any other priors, he was given a life sentence for robbery and kidnapping. And, like, he looks pretty young in that picture. I didn't look up how old he is. But, like, first offense and you get life for robbing a bank and kidnapping where you didn't hurt anyone.
But you crossed state lines.
But you crossed state lines, and so it's like a technicality. So he gets to Alcatraz, and he was, like, pretty optimistic when he got there. And he actually began writing a book about his time there. He was really interested in the people there and about their stories.
At the time of his incarceration, were they allowed to talk, I guess?
Let's see. Oh, I forgot to say, they did relax the talking rule in 1937. I want to say no. I'm going to say no.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure how he's getting any information, but whatever. So he's writing a book, and he had heard that Warden Johnston had published a book, and so he requested an interview with the warden and asked, he's like, would you mind reading my transcript or my manuscript and giving me some notes on it? Like, I'd love to get your opinion. And the warden was like, sure, I will. So a couple weeks go by, and Whitey follows up with him and is like, hey, what did you think of my manuscript? This is what the warden says, quote, I read the manuscript and decided it's not the kind of material you should have, so I confiscated it.
It's so heartbreaking.
I know.
But not at all surprising. Like, I totally was like, as soon as he asked the warden to read it, I was like, you basically just forfeited it. Like,
I know. And so after that, Whitey's optimism just, like,
he
imploded.
took his, like, one little thread of hope that he was holding on
I
to.
know. It's like, okay. So Whitey is no longer optimistic. He's now completely changed his outlook. So in September of 1937, and I believe this is after the talking rule has been relaxed, which, fun story about that. The warden announced to the public that he had decided to relax that rule as like an act of humanitarianism or whatever.
Goodwill.
But apparently what actually happened is that one day all the inmates just realized that they could start talking. And if they all did it, they were like, there's only so many dungeon cells. Like, they can't punish us all. And so they just all started talking, and that was it.
That's how I would see it as too. And like, it probably was one of those, like, you know, it was probably easier to enforce at certain times, but like, you know, people who are right next door to each other, or maybe like across the way or whatever, could be like, okay, the guard's like all the way over there.
Yeah.
If we whisper quietly, like, we could talk.
Yeah. And I think the whole thing happened like during lunch one day, and just like everyone just started talking, and the guards were just like, what do you want us to do? Like, we can't kill everyone. I mean, they probably could, but okay. So in September of 1937, Whitey and Tex Lucas, who was that other beautiful mugshot, and I didn't look into his background very much, but he was serving 30 years for bank robbery. They organized a work strike in the machine shop. So one day, all the workers just stopped working and went on strike. And do you want to know what their demands were?
Something very simple and basic, I bet.
Yes. They wanted radios and newspapers. And also, I lied. This was before they were allowed to talk, because they were also striking to be allowed to talk.
Gotcha.
So they wanted to be able to talk to each other, to have news of the outside world, and to have radios.
Seems fair. Of course it's not, though.
It's not
according.
Like, literally a newspaper. The thing that I canceled my subscription of because it was too annoying for me to get a newspaper every day.
Same. I was
like,
I can't keep up. Like, I don't have time to sit and read the newspaper.
I know. Jeez.
I mean, I did if I woke up an extra hour and a half early, but I'm not doing that.
I wouldn't have done it anyways. I don't care that much. I get discouraged by the news. So Warden Johnston replied by ordering that all strikers be locked up and put on only bread and water until they were done with their strike. Whitey and Tex Lucas were put in the dungeon, obviously. And most of the strikers gave in by the end of the week. They were like, whatever, I guess we don't need newspapers or the right to talk. And by day 5, Whitey also gave in. He's like, I'm done. So on his first day back at lunch, he was leaving the dining hall, and Warden Johnston happened to be just popped in, checking out things, surveying his realm. And Whitey attacked him. Because Whitey's fucking mad.
He's over it.
And
but Whitey's also probably very weak from 5 days of nothing but bread and water, so...
This is true. Although
probably not easy to overpower the warden.
Well, he punched him in the head and knocked him unconscious.
Good.
And then
maybe that's what made him such a Looney Tunes when it came to last week's episode, where he's like, we need the National Guard, the Marines, the Navy, we need police, we need everyone.
Let's put out a press release with incorrect information.
Yeah, put out a false press release before we actually go and try and assess and then handle the situation.
Or before we tell all the families what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this would be a good time to tell everyone if you haven't listened to last week's episode.
Yeah. That's why we call him Warden Dumbass.
Yeah. So Whitey punches Warden Johnston in the head, knocks him unconscious, and then kicks him in the face.
Good.
And then sits on top of him and just keeps punching him, right? And I feel like I can speak for everyone when we say, Team Whitey.
Yep.
Kick the shit out of him.
He's the hero of the story so far.
Yeah, like, no one is saying, poor Warden Johnston, what a victim here. So it takes 5 guards to pull Whitey off of the warden. And then those 5 guards beat Whitey with a billy club. And then I have a quote. 2 guards took turns playing croquet on his head with their metal clubs, driving him inches at a whack halfway across the dining hall.
Please tell me Whitey didn't survive this.
No, he did. I think he actually recovered, like, in a couple days. He wasn't too put out by it. But I would also just like to... Why are we taking so many headshots, guys? Did we not... I mean, I guess we didn't really know about concussions, but... Good grief. Stop hitting everyone in the head, please. I mean, I guess internal organ damage isn't that much better, but your brain is a pretty important organ. Mm-hmm. You can get your spleen taken out, but not your brain.
My grandmother didn't have a spleen. Oh. I mean, she had one. She had it removed after a car
She was born without one. My old dog didn't have a spleen because we were in a car accident, like a small rear-ended one, and his spleen ruptured, and we didn't know. And then, like, months later, we thought he was just getting fat. And it turns out his spleen had just been, like, it grown into, like, a tumor. It was a 10-pound tumor that they removed.
You poor dog.
I know. Poor guy. I mean, he was fine. I mean, he wasn't fine. He had every medical thing in the world. But the spleen was, like, the least of his worries. He was fine after that. 3 months later, after this incident, was when Ted and Ralph would break out and go to their unknown fates. Now, I said I did a little bit of additional research on Ted and Ralph just to supplement last week. So, first of all, I did find out that...
And just a quick recap of...
Yes.
They did successfully break out and make it to the water.
And they were presumed drowned because it was very bad weather. And there was a really strong current, and their bodies were never recovered.
Yes.
But officially, it's not known what happened to them. And there were later reports of possible sightings of them. So, who knows? I just wanted to get a background on, like, what they did to get there. Okay, so Ted Cole, he began his life of crime with armed robbery at the age of 14. He earned the nickname Teddy the Terror.
Oh my goodness.
I know. When he was 17, a judge decided to make an example of him. This judge literally said that it's in his blood, that he's like a criminal to his blood, and he's going to eventually kill someone, and so he sentenced him to death.
Oh my
at
goodness.
17 years old for like robbery, like, and like probably armed robbery, but like 17 years old. Also, I read like the trial transcript or whatever for this. Apparently at 17 he was married. Little Teddy was, which like,
well, I mean, look at him.
I know, I'm like, I would have married him when I was 17. Anyways, this death sentence caused public outrage, thankfully. And he was able to successfully appeal this to a 15-year sentence, which is like more reasonable.
Yes.
And hopefully that judge was disbarred, although probably he wasn't. During his 15-year sentence, Ted did in fact murder his cellmate. He claims in self-defense, so we don't know the circumstances, whatever. During the trial for that, which eventually got dropped, I don't know why, Ted escaped from prison in a laundry bag. Innovative. When he was out, he just continued doing robberies and taking hostages.
Did he go home? Or did he just...
No, I think he just got out and like went on the run and just started robbing places and taking hostages. He's a terror, remember? Teddy the Terror. It sounds like the name of a
like a cartoon.
Yeah, like I'm thinking
like a children's book.
I'm thinking of I don't know why I'm thinking of Teddy Grams, but but like maybe I'm thinking of Corduroy the Bear, but like some variation of that, but Teddy the Terror, and he's just committing violent crimes. Anyways, he was recaptured while committing these various crimes and sentenced to 50 years, and that's when he was recommended for Alcatraz. So he did have a fairly violent past. And apparently when he got to Alcatraz, he said something like, I don't like it here. I don't think I'll stay very long. Or I don't think I'm going to like it here. I don't think I'll stay very long. Or something like that. And he just, I don't know.
How long was he there for before he escaped again? Do we know?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe a couple years? I don't know. That's the part of the...
He didn't stay very long, did he?
He didn't. That's the part I was adding in when you came in, and I wasn't wearing pants. I was trying to add that in real quick. Ralph was also got involved in crime as a teenager. He didn't have a fun nickname, as far as I could tell.
Bummer.
I know, bummer. But he did run with a well-known criminal named Wilbur Underhill, who was known as the Tri-State Terror.
Huh.
So 2 terrors.
We really like the word terror.
It was the 30s.
Well, also alliteration is fun.
And terror
I'm thinking, like, what's Walker going to be? Walker the Wacko?
No, that's
Wackadoodle?
Wackadoodle. So in 1933, Ralph and the Tri-State Terror were found hiding out in a cottage in Shawnee, Oklahoma. And also with them was Ralph's girlfriend, who I kind of assume was in the crimes with them. So the feds found them hiding in this cottage, and there was a shootout, because of course there was. Everyone gets shot. Like, all 3 of them gets shot. Ralph's the only one to survive, so his girlfriend dies in this shootout. I know! Who knew he had such a tragic backstory? Anyways, he got a life sentence for his crimes, and that's how he ended up at Alcatraz. Also, him and Ted met at a previous prison that they were in together. So they knew each other previously before they came to Alcatraz.
Like, oh, that's my buddy.
Yeah, they knew each other before. So that was 1937. Also, quickly before I move on.
Wait, hold on. What was the fate of Whitey after he got his head bashed in like a ball?
He recovered.
And that's just the end of it? He just lived out his sentence?
Yeah, I think he died in I want to say in the 80s. Like, he lived for a while. He didn't die young. I did also read another account of, I should really have my other notes pulled up here, of Joseph Bowers, who was the first escape attempt, who was in April of 37. He was the one who climbed the fence. The other account that I read said that he was known to be, like, mentally unwell and that he was not climbing the fence, but that he had pushed a trash can up to the fence and was standing on the trash can and trying to feed a seagull. Like, reaching up to the fence trying to feed a seagull, and that a guard shot him from there. So, I don't like either of the explanations for that. Okay. So, 2 years later, or I guess a year later, in January of 1939, we have another escape attempt. That's your next page if you want to see. So, this one actually takes place on Friday the 13th, which is January. So, there's 5 men involved, and you only have 4.
Looking at Doc Martin.
I know. I'll go through them. Your last one's on the last page, but he's the best looking one, and I'll get to him last. So we have Arthur Doc Barker. Did I write Martin?
Yeah,
it's supposed to be Barker. Sorry.
That's why I was laughing at Doc Martin.
My head was very late when I was doing these. So Doc Barker was a member of the Barker Carpus gang, which I think was run by his mom and his brothers. And he was serving a life sentence for kidnapping and I think murder. There was some murder involved. We also have Dale Stamphill, who's a pretty good looking guy. He was serving a life sentence for robbery and kidnapping and maybe murder. I don't know. He had escaped from from the Oklahoma State Reformatory in 1935, and a guard had been murdered in the process, but it's unclear if he was the one who murdered the guard. So I don't know. Then we have Rufus McCain. He's serving a life sentence for bank robbery, and he had escaped from a prison farm in 1935. We have William Martin. He was serving 25 years for armed robbery, and he was another one who got done dirty. He only got like $6 out of this robbery. I know. But the place he robbed, I think it was like a convenience store, it also happened to be a postal office, and so it turned into a federal crime. And I'm sure it didn't help that it was the 1930s and he was black. And then our last guy on the next page is Henry Young. And I just want you to look at his jaw for a second and tell me who sculpted that. It's like made of stone. Henry actually was an incredibly violent person, so maybe.
I think Dale's my favorite.
Yeah, Dale's a pretty good looking guy. So Henry is serving a life sentence for robbery and murder. And he was known as a troublemaker at Alcatraz. There's a movie about him. I forget what it's called, but apparently it's incredibly inaccurate. And he's going to come up, like, later. He continues in the story. Originally, it was 4 of them who were coming up with this plan. Rufus heard about the plan and, like, inserted himself into it.
Pulled a Sam.
Yeah.
Pulled a Sam Shockley.
Well, he actually staged a fight in the rec yard and got himself put on D block because all of the other guys were on D block planning it together. Rufus staged a fight so he could get put on D block so that he could get in on the fight. Cool. I think he like intercepted a note or something. So their plan involved using a 2-inch piece of hacksaw blade. And they used that to cut through the bottom bar of each of their cells. So they had one single 2-inch piece of blade, and they would share that between the 5 of them. They would work during the day because, I think in D block you didn't get a work assignment and you weren't really let out. So they had the whole day to do this. They would flush the shavings that they were getting. They would flush those down the toilet. And then they would smear soap and burnt matches over the work to disguise it so that the guards wouldn't notice. Guards were supposed to be checking the cells regularly. Like, they were literally supposed to go by and, like, bang on the cell, like, on the bars with a mallet. Obviously, they weren't doing that, which, thank goodness they weren't, because otherwise...
we wouldn't have a story.
We wouldn't have this great story. So once they got through their bars... there was like a part 2 of the plan. So they would sneak out during the night and they would work on the bars of a window. And this took like several nights. So they'd be sneaking out, work on the bar, disguise it, and then sneak back in. So they would take turns cutting the bar. One of them would stand guard. And then they got a bar spreader, like the same kind that Bernard Coy uses next week.
Last week.
Sorry, last week. A couple years from when this takes place, but last week. Time is a... What is that term? Time is a construct? Time. Okay. Anyways, whatever. Over a long period of time, they saw through several bars, and the 5 of them make it out. So on the night of January 13th, there's a heavy fog, similar to when Ted and Ralph escape. Also on that note, it's thought that the reason that Ted and Ralph, it's thought the reason that they picked the day that they did to escape is because of the heavy fog, and that they didn't realize that the heavy fog meant also probably that there would be really rough waters. So when they got down to the beach, they were probably surprised by like the heavy, or like the
rough water.
Yeah,
because the fog would make excellent cover, unlike our other group that were swimming and got shot at in the water.
Yes. Which also makes you think, like, how desperate were they to get out if you get down to there and think and realize suddenly this water is a lot rougher than I thought. Like, the chance of me dying in this has gone up a lot. Do I want to go back and just go back in the way I came, or
so I
take my chances?
Terrified of the thought of drowning and being burned to death are like two of the ways that like I hope I do not go out either of those ways. Honestly, I'd probably chance drowning over being in prison, especially if I've got a life sentence.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'd be more on board to steal a boat, to get on a plan that involved stealing a boat than trying to swim. I also read that I think it was Ralph had grabbed onto like a piece of wood. Like, I think some of them, the plan was not just to free swim, but to grab onto a piece of wood to use as a flotation device or something, and to kind of, kickboard your way through, which I guess would conserve a little bit of energy. But
I don't know. When I'm swimming my laps, I do, various different swimming styles per laps. And sometimes after the kickboard, I'm just like, okay, I'm exhausted now.
I don't know. I'm such a poor swimmer and I'm reminded that I always think of the time that, which I think you were there for this. We were at, I hope you did not notice it, but I think you were present. We were at Scott and Taylor's. And it was when Luke came down and like surprised us or whatever, and I was on like an inner tube or something, and he had just shown up, and I was like, oh, I'll go say hi. And so I like hopped out of the inner tube, and I was like, I'll just swim this short distance back to the dock. And that's when I realized that like I can only swim probably just to save my life, because I didn't have anything to kick off of. I was just going from like jumping into the water. I almost lost my sunglasses. And it was just like this floundering, I don't know. I always look like an idiot in the water in front of Luke Swanson for whatever reason. He also saved me from seasickness one time, and it's a whole thing.
Oh, Lucas.
Anyways, so they get through the window and down to the water, and this is all around 3 a.m. They get down to the water. It's unclear what their plan is from this part. I think they were tying pieces of driftwood together with their clothes. But because there was heavy fog and the searchlights couldn't penetrate, I like to think that they learned their lesson from Ted and Ralph, and they were like, oh, we should probably
pick another night.
No, like the guards. I feel like the guards were like, we should probably find another way to like patrol when there's heavy fog. So because the searchlights couldn't pierce through the fog, they had guards that were like kind of regularly patrolling the area. And they overheard this group of men down by the shore like talking amongst themselves. So they hear them, they yell at them. The men obviously don't stop, and so the guards start shooting. So Doc Barker gets shot, I want to say in the arm and the head. He dies. So Doc Barker dies. Dale Stamphill gets shot in both legs, but he lives. I know. And then everyone else, Rufus, William, and Henry, all surrender. All right, so Henry Young and Rufus McCain are both sent to solitary for 3 years after this.
3 years of
Yes.
solitary. In the dungeon?
Unclear.
Or just D-block? Okay.
Unclear. I don't know if they just mean D block, or if they mean the dungeon. And I also kind of got the impression that Young, because he was more like difficult and argumentative, was probably, if it was the dungeon, he got more time in there than Rufus did. But during this time, Rufus openly has a grudge against Henry. And he's like, I'm going to kill Henry.
Henry's like, not if I kill you first.
Take a drink.
Take a sip.
So, apparently Rufus blamed Henry for their plan's failure. A little unclear why. But also, I read that a year earlier, Rufus had made some sexual advances towards Henry.
I felt like...
Oh, I know.
That's where you were going.
I love a little prison romance. I know. Look back at them both. Mm-hmm. Rufus is not a bad-looking dude. I mean, he's not the best one that we've seen, obviously.
He looks a little, like, down and out in the photo. Like,
it's not the best picture of him.
Yeah, he looks a little droopy.
He looks a little drunk. Henry looks like he's not quite human.
I don't know. Like he belongs in, like, Top Gun or something.
I know. Again, that jaw. Who made it?
And the intense eyes.
Yeah, he does look like he's gonna kill you while you sleep, but I don't know.
He looks military to me.
I would take that profile picture twice. I'd be like, we didn't quite get that one. We gotta do it again. I don't know. He's just got such a great jawline. And again, I'm saying that, and then I will reemphasize, I realize that he is a violent offender.
He's got that same look in his eyes that Tom Cruise in Top Gun.
Yeah. He looks mad.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
So, basically, Rufus wanted to start a little something. Henry was like, nah. And then their plan failed.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, it's obviously his fault.
Yes. Rufus is taking out his frustration now. Which, Rufus, I'd also be upset if someone like Henry rejected me. Not in an angry way. I'd just be like...
well, there goes my self-esteem.
Just embarrassed and, yeah.
Actually, I would be like, you know what? No, that's fair. You were definitely levels of attractiveness above me.
I feel like it's
so
fine.
you rejecting me is actually par for the course. Like, I get it.
I'll try a Marvin Hubbard next time. It's fine.
Oh, I think he's more attractive than
you do?
Henry.
Really?
Yeah. He reminds me of Dermot Mulroney, and so that's what.
I don't know. I don't know. Okay.
I like James Borman too, but like he's got one of those wide mouths.
He looks 17 years old to me. I can't get over how young he looks. He looks like a baby.
Yeah. I mean, he looked young, but then you ruined it when you said 17, so...
Oh, sorry. He looks 19.
There we go.
20.
There we go.
He was like 25, I think, when he died. So, to be fair, so was Ted Cole. He was also a baby. Mm-hmm. And for us, they're all babies. Mm-hmm. Listen. Okay. So, Rufus is mad at Young. Young is just brewing in solitary. So, Henry Young gets out of solitary confinement in 1942. 11 days after he is released back into the general population of the prison, he stabs Rufus with a homemade knife, and Rufus dies. So, now we have a murder trial for Henry Young, because you can't just go
kill people,
stabbing other prisoners. However, This trial became known as the trial of Alcatraz because Henry Young's lawyers argued that the psychological torture inflicted by Alcatraz had caused him to murder Rufus. They essentially said, Henry Young didn't murder Rufus McCain, Alcatraz murdered Rufus McCain.
Yes. That sounds like it. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And to back up this claim, they brought in witnesses, aka inmates. So they also, unfortunately, brought in...
Oh, if I was an inmate, I'd be like, sign me
I
up.
know, right?
I will come and talk about the psychological torture.
They also brought in Warden Johnston.
Warden Dumbass.
Who did testify that Henry had spent a year in the dungeon. So I guess at least 1 year of his solitary confinement was in the dungeon. He confirmed...
Chained to a wall.
Yeah. And he confirmed that he was in near or total darkness during that time. When asked what kind of what did he do to, what kind of infractions would cause him to go to the dungeon, the warden said he would receive that for infractions such as not eating all of his food, having 2 pairs of extra socks in his cell, talking loudly, or, quote, banging his pillow on the floor of his cell. And they were like, sorry, banging his pillow on the floor of his... He's like, yeah, that actually makes more noise than you would think.
What?
Yeah.
You know he's doing that because he's insane.
Yeah. So William Dunnock, who was in Alcatraz, he was serving a 15-year sentence for bank robbery. He testified to receiving similar treatment in the dungeon. And he stated on record that he expected to be physically punished for giving testimony in court that day.
I was about to say that. I would be like, sign me up. And while I'm there, I'll be like, you know what's going to happen as soon as I leave here? I'm getting the beat out of me.
Yeah.
And I'm going straight to the dungeon just for speaking up.
Yep. He's like,
just for telling the truth.
Yep.
So.
And thank goodness that Henry's lawyers were smart enough to ask these questions, while they were on the stand. Sam Berlin, who was serving 15 years for robbing a brewery, which, if I'm going to go down for robbing somewhere, let's rob a brewery.
That's your first hit?
Yeah, I'm not going to rob it. Well, I don't know. Robbing banks seems to get you life in prison.
Yeah.
I'll do 15 years for robbing a brewery. Sam testified that he had been locked in a solitary cell for 12 days with another inmate, so I guess you could double down, who had tuberculosis. Which, Katie, you're the scientist. Is tuberculosis
a little contagious?
A little contagious.
A little contagious.
But just by, touch, not airborne, right?
Oh, no. I mean, you could cough all over somebody. You'll probably be fine.
We're being very sarcastic. Tuberculosis is extremely contagious and is airborne. Just in case anyone didn't get that. He testified that inmate had begged for medical care while he was down there, but had been denied. And that he had died a month later. Presumably of the tuberculosis.
Jeez.
He also said that while in the dungeon, they were given a cup of water twice a day and a slice of bread once a day. And that the bucket that was used for a toilet was changed every 9 days. And then when they...
Guess it's not that bad, though, because only subsisting on water, 2 cups of water, which is not enough.
Not a lot.
And a slice of bread, you don't have a lot coming out.
Really, truly. And so, in between inmates, it took forever. This trial had to take forever because they had to wait. They weren't bringing in multiple inmates and, they weren't just, hanging out in the back room to wait to testify. They'd bring in one, and then when he was done, they'd take him back to Alcatraz, and then they'd have to wait for them to bring in another one.
Recess.
So while they were waiting, they gave Warden Johnston a chance to respond to this. And Warden Johnston said, oh no, the toilet bucket was changed 2 to 4 times a day. And the inmates had, quote, a bowl of water at all times.
A bowl of water.
A bowl of water like a fucking dog. Sorry, if you're treating your dogs like that, you shouldn't have a dog. but also treat humans better than that. I mean, I think you should be treating your dogs like humans, but also you should be treating your humans probably better than dogs. So the associate warden...
and he's only got 15 years. In 15 years, he'll be back in society.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to, send him back into society as an even worse, more deranged animal?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying is, some of these people, Henry Young, I think eventually did get paroled. Mm-hmm. I mean, years and years later.
Spoiler.
Sorry, spoiler alert.
We're not through his trial
Sorry,
yet.
I'm so sorry. I mean, even the really bad ones eventually may get parole. Mm-hmm. Eventually. And it's you want them to not violate their parole, don't you? Or do you? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Do you really want them to go back into the world and be productive members of society and not reoffend? Or are you just getting off on having a power trip and you think that they are, not worthy of human treatment and you really secretly want them to just stay in there forever so that you can continue treating them like shit? And you know that if you treat them like humans, they might go out and, live a better life and not end up back in there. So they had Associate Warden Miller, mm-hmm. who he was in the last week's episode. He was questioned about an incident with Henry Young. And this is when they were tell us about when Young got in trouble for banging his pillow on the cell floor. What was that about? So, according to prison records, Young was banging his pillow on the floor, and he also began leading the other inmates in a song called They'll Hang Old Meathead from a Sour Apple Tree. And Meathead was what they called Associate Warden Miller. So they're singing a song about him that's making fun of him. And Miller, of course, gets mad about this. So he allegedly drags Young out of his cell, throws him down a circular steel stairwell, and then jumped on his face with both feet, knocking out several of his teeth. And then he had 4 other guards beat Young unconscious and dump him in the dungeon. And Miller, of course, denied everything except having ordered Young into solitary confinement. And then said that some men, quote, thrived on such confinement, gained weight, emerged spiritually benefited with a, quote, better outlook on life.
No.
And
if by better outlook on life you mean completely beaten down and void of anything and everything and completely downtrodden, then yeah. So where they just went along with the tide without even thinking, without feeling, just existing.
Yeah.
Then great outlook on life.
Yeah. And here's what I thought of when I read this. I feel the whole mindset of the wardens and some of these guards, and I have heard this from people in my life, is well, if you didn't want this punishment that you're receiving, you shouldn't have done this crime, right? You're receiving this punishment because you chose...
The punishment doesn't fit the crime.
Right. And so I feel they would look at someone and be well, you, Henry Young, were a violent criminal who,
so
let's say...
just karma. Now
violently... Yeah, let's say you've, assaulted someone while robbing a bank, right? And so now you're in prison. Okay, well now you, Associate Warden Miller, are by all means illegally assaulting another person.
Do you also deserve
this? You're also illegally assaulting another human with no regard for their life. But in your head it's okay that you're doing it because in your head this person deserves it. Mm-hmm. Even though literally, legally, according to the law, No, they don't. What they deserve is the sentence that they're serving, which is being locked up.
You're being punished for doing this crime, but this other person is doing this same crime under the guise of justice.
Yeah.
And that's why our system's flawed. That's why there's so many people who just, they don't believe in the system. They don't trust the system. They say, screw it all.
Yeah. So Young also testified about his time in the dungeon. He talked about it being cold, like, all the time, not being able to get warm. He said he got dizzy and disoriented because of the darkness, like, just not ever being able to see. And, like, I assume even when your eyes adjust to the darkness, the walls are black, and so it's...
Have you ever been caving? No, you haven't. Ask
that question again.
I knew the answer, like, before it was even all the way out of my mouth. I've been caving a couple of times, and it's a super fun, very cool experience. And there's been several times that, like, we'll get to, like, some big chamber, and they're like, all right, everyone, circle up, like, they hang out. And it's like, okay, now that we've all, like, rested or, whatever, had our lunch, whatever, everyone do me a favor. Turn off your headlamps.
Nope.
And we would just sit there for several minutes while, eyes adjusted to the darkness, but your eyes never really adjust because this is true darkness. Like, there is no light from anywhere of any kind getting in. And it's surreal.
Yeah. I do, the closest I can say I've come to that is when I was a child, before all of my deep-seated fears set in. It was a family vacation to the mountains, and we did like one of those touristy caves. I'm sure in the mountains of North Carolina somewhere. And we got to that part where they were deep in, and they were like, now we're going to turn the lights off. And they did that, and they said, wave your hand in front of your face. And I remember being like, I can't see it. What do I do?
Yeah, like, I know I'm doing it, but, like,
not.
A couple of years ago, we were at the murder cabin, because the real cabin hadn't been built yet. And my father-in-law had come to, help build something on the property. And he's got sleep apnea, so he has a CPAP machine. So he was sleeping in the murder cabin with us on the airbed, and he's got his CPAP machine that has, like, a little blue light. But it's so dark there, like, especially if it's a new moon or, the clouds are out. It is so dark there that little tiny blue light was very bright. And because there's no electricity, it was running on battery. And so, like, I went to sleep with the blue light on.
Yeah.
And I woke up in the middle of the night, and I thought I had gone blind. Oh, no. Because I was like, my eyes, they're open. Like, I touched my face to make sure that, like, yes, my eyes were open, but I couldn't see anything. And I was like, wait, no, hold on. Adjusting. Okay, there's, like, a little bit, like, I could start to see some shadows coming in from, like, the light outside now. And then, like, it just took me a good long minute, because I was also just tired and disoriented.
Yeah.
And then it took my brain a long time to catch up. And I feel like being in the dark, even if you're not just waking up, it's going to be disorienting to the point where your brain is very confused and takes a long time to catch up.
Yeah. He also talked about not being able to get any kind of sleep, or, like, any kind of meaningful sleep other than just short naps. Always being uncomfortable and sore. And, I mean, like, you don't have a bed. You're just...
on the floor.
And, like, also imagine if you have been beaten at all. I mean, I'm just imagining me with my regular back and shoulder pain.
My usual aches.
Yeah, your usual pains. And then having to sleep on a floor instead of a bed. And he talked about hearing men around him getting beaten for various infractions. And just... This is a quote from Dr. Joseph Catton, who was a witness for the defense in Henry's trial. He was also an alienist, which is a detective? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. not as cool as it sounds, but anyways. Okay. He said, men should not be beaten for their natural reactions to corporal punishment, which should be termed corporal control. After it has served its purpose for subduing a prisoner, it becomes torture.
Alienist is psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist, okay.
Because, there was a book that I wanted to read or started reading called The Alienist.
Yes.
And I was like, I thought it was more like forensics, but like
yeah.
it's related to solving crimes.
I knew it had something to do with that.
Psychiatrist.
Yeah. Yeah, and something that I wanted to say was, like, just this whole idea of, like, psychological torture. I feel like no matter what you believe, if you believe, like, whether or not you believe that prisons should be for rehabilitation or whether you believe that they should be for punishment, no one should be psychologically tortured for
even
their
if you
crimes.
believe in, like, an eye for an eye. Like, well, you assaulted somebody, well, you need to be assaulted. That's an eye for an eye.
Yeah.
That's not psychological torture.
Yeah.
Nobody deserves that.
Yes.
Except unless maybe people who have psychologically tortured other people. I don't know.
And, like, I mean, I was thinking of it with, like disciplining your child. And, like, granted, I'm not a mother, but like, I mean, I'm thinking, you know, when you ground your child, right, and you are taking away privileges from them, that's more of, like, a punishment and less of a teaching moment. I mean, because sometimes...
Why do you think I have such, like, I'm just so emotionally distraught over this methodology of, well, you didn't eat your supper, that's what's for dinner, so, like, you've just got to go to bed hungry.
Because you're not trying to punish him.
I'm like, this isn't parenting, this is a punishment.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, he is a toddler, and toddlers will eat when they're hungry.
Exactly.
And if they're not hungry and they don't want to eat, they're not going to eat.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he wakes up, and then we give him breakfast, and he eats,
yeah.
Like, he's not losing weight. He's 26 pounds. He is okay.
Yeah.
I am not starving my child.
Yeah.
And,
but, like, I mean, when you hear parents grounding their children and they take away, like, internet or, you know, for me it was, privileges. Like, TV.
I retained basic human rights.
Yeah.
I was allowed to go to the bathroom whenever I wanted.
Yeah.
I was allowed freaking daylight.
Yeah,
you know,
and
I was never shut in my room with the blinds drawn, and I'll bring you a cup of water and a slice of bread later.
I mean, that's the
I could still join the family for dinner. I could, unless I was grounded from TV, specifically, I could still, like, hang out and, like, watch TV with family. Like, I
mean, you think about this. This is the kind of shit that, like, serial killers do to their victims. Like, lock them in dark rooms and deprive them of all, like, sensory things. I don't know, to think that there are humans out there that think, oh, there's other humans who have committed crimes, which, by the way, some crimes which are, your main crime was robbery, you know, assault and robbery.
And again, we don't know all the details.
But the thing that I'm punishing you for is because you had too many socks in your cell, and I'm mad about it, and you didn't listen, you didn't follow all of my rules exactly to the T, and I need you to understand that I'm in charge.
There's a difference between breaking rules and committing crimes.
Yeah,
and while, yes, there's, you know, like, you should be, I mean, maybe, I don't like the word punished right now because it sounds, has such a bad, heavy connotation to it. But, like, yes, you should not break the rules, even if they're stupid.
Yeah.
And, like, if you do break the rules and you're caught doing that, and you do receive some, like, yes. But, like, rules and crimes are different.
Truthfully.
Like, punished for your crimes.
Yeah.
Not for having too many socks.
I know. And, like, truthfully, psychological torture is not, like, there's truthfully no benefit to it. I'm looking at Sam right now on the wall, and, like, I'm like, so many of us are already psychologically tortured. Like, we're already going to be born with psychological torture built into our brains.
Oh, yeah, and that's, going back to parenting, too, is I don't ever want to do anything like, oh, well, if you don't, you know, eat your veggies, the monster's going to eat you.
Yeah.
That's psychological torture.
Well, and you don't want to do anything that, like, later on you find out he's doing that because he's got a sensory problem, or, and it's
like, my kid hates the beach. He hates sand. Does he hate sand because it's new and unfamiliar and he's nervous and, like, kind of freaked out by it? Or does he have a sensory issue and really freaking hates sand? I'm not going to torture him.
You're not going to cover him in sand and find out.
Exactly.
Don't do that.
I mean, I'm going to bring him to the beach to try and expose him a couple of more times. Like, maybe it's just because it's unfamiliar. Like, but like one or two more experiences and he still hates it. Maybe he just hates it and I'm going to stop torturing my kid.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, there's no benefit to this. The point of this trial is you're making things worse. You're taking someone who possibly was stable. I mean, I don't know. Henry might not have been stable to begin with.
Yeah, we don't know enough about his
But you're
early
absolutely making it worse by torturing him psychologically.
And so his statement about Associate Warden Miller, the meathead, dragging him out of the cell, throwing him downstairs, and then jumping on his face, beating him up, having the other guards beat him up. I would not be surprised at all if that was 100% true, or if it was 100% fabricated in his mind.
Yeah.
By, just being, he has been beaten, maybe he is missing teeth, and now he's in the dungeon, and he has given nothing but time but to let his mind just wander.
Yeah.
And his mind could have conjured up this story.
Well,
and then he starts believing it's 100% it's gospel.
Yeah.
And I would not, I wouldn't hold it against him either.
No.
That's the thing, is like, even if it is made up, the reason that he came up with that story
plausible.
is because of all of the other psychological punishment.
Yeah, and it sounds plausible. I mean, and at this point too, it's like, okay, well, Alcatraz, you've set yourself up for this. Like, it's your own fault. You shot yourself in the foot. You've set yourself up for making yourself completely uncredible now at this point, because you have...
I feel like Alcatraz is like a textbook example of a failed experiment.
Yes, it is. And I almost hate it now that it's like a touristy attraction for, like, ghosts and stuff.
Well, so that was gonna be my next thing, is like, we have a lot of places on our, like, dream road trip, like, where do you want to visit? Obviously Body Farm. Finish your drink.
Is that there. A finish your drink one?
That's a finish your drink. We mentioned the Body Farm.
That's our second glass of wine.
Is Alcatraz on our Katy and Hannah's dream list of road trip / vacation destinations?
Alcatraz is absolutely on my list. I don't know if I'd want to do the haunted version, though.
I'd rather go for the historical accuracy.
Yeah, I absolutely want to see all of the different... Like, I feel like I've done so much of this.
Can't you spend the night in Alcatraz?
Can you?
I feel like...
Everything I've read says you don't want to.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It sounds very loud.
But I feel like maybe it's some other prison I'm thinking of that, like, you can do, like, a tourist, like, a tour, you get, like, the history, you learn about it, and you can spend the night.
Maybe. But let me ask you this, because I was thinking about this. Do you think, because I was thinking about the haunted aspect of it, and I was like, well, all of these things that we've talked about so far are not people who have died there, but people who have been essentially tortured there. Do you think, or, like, what's your opinion on, like, spirits or energies? You know, because I don't like to think that a place where you were just tortured is where your spirit would stay, right? But do you think that there would be energy retained there from just having such a horrible negative experience, even if, you know, like, say Henry Young had such a horrible torturous experience there, but that's not where he died? Do you think that awful experience or would leave some kind of residual energy behind?
So, and that's where I, like, go into, like, I can deep dive, like, wormhole into some, you know, thoughts and theories about ghosts. So, like, ghosts and time travel is where my brain just goes down a wormhole, and it's just like, okay, well, but if that, but if you travel back in time and this changes the loop, and this, I mean, I make my own psychological torture when I think about these things, and so it's like, all right, where does, like, what causes a haunting? Like, what causes energy, aka ghost or paranormal activity, is that the memory, or where the person actually, like the spirit actually left this plane of existence.
Yeah. I feel like it's got to be energy. I don't know.
By the way, it looks like you can
Really?
stay the night. A handful, like, so from an article in 2017, this is just glossing over. This is on Halloween. You can stay the night on Alcatraz. And you can stay in the dungeon specifically.
No, I'm not doing that.
So
I'm not staying in the dungeon.
I'm going to do some more research on this.
All right. I'm not going to stay in the dungeon. I want to pick my own cell.
I think it's the dungeon or D block. And again, I'm not sure if... I mean, are they different? Is it
The dungeon is different than D block.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah,
that's
the
what
dungeon
I
is
thought.
basement cells.
Okay.
D block is part of the regular cell block.
It's just general solitary.
Yes.
Do you want to guess how much
Oh,
from this article, again, that I haven't vetted at all, so like don't come at me, okay? This is a cursory Google. Do you want to guess how much it costs to stay the night on Halloween in the dungeon?
$1,500.
No, it's less than that.
Oh, less than that. Okay.
But it's like a specific and like
$666.
there we go.
Really?
Yes.
Ah!
According to this one article, $666 to stay the night. But it looks like there are, from another article from 2023, from June, so you apparently still can, because again, like that first one was 2017. I'm like, well, COVID, I don't know. There are 18 overnight stays, it says, and a staggering 200 to 400 groups compete for the opportunity to secure one of these spots. So this is my self-imposed homework now.
Okay.
I'm going to research staying the night at Alcatraz.
Okay.
And, you know, because it looks like there's, you know, like I said, groups vying and competing and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I'll make it available maybe for like a petition or something, so all of our listeners can be like, we need Hannah and Katy to go spend the night in Alcatraz. And if it becomes like, if it's a possible thing, if our listeners like make it happen that we have spots, you and I are going to go to Alcatraz and spend the night.
I have to stay in the dungeon though.
I'll be your cellmate. I'll hold your hand if our chains allow it.
Stay in D block, please. Let me stay in Sam's old cell. Oh gosh.
Just gonna be close to your boy.
I know. Oh my gosh. All right. So the jury in this big trial ultimately sided with the defense and found Henry Young guilty of involuntary manslaughter
by reason of insanity.
They added 3 years to his sentence.
Cool.
They released a statement to the Department of Justice and Congress.
They were also probably not worried about him killing another bad guy.
I know. They were like, whatever.
Well, you know, because what was Rufus's sentence? Like, how long was he supposed to be in there?
Let's see. Oh, that's in my other notes. Not in my...
So, I mean, he wasn't in there for life, right?
No, Rufus? I think Rufus was... No, Rufus wasn't there for life.
Okay, well, never mind.
Yeah. Oh, well.
I mean, the jury might have seen it as, you know, Henry doing a favor. Like, oh, you know, this other bad guy was going to be out in another 10 years. So, like, kept that bad guy off the streets.
I know. And the funny thing about this is, like, even when there's, like, all of this sympathy for, you know, how everyone's being treated in there, the way they still talk about it is, like, these dangerous criminals that we need to protect the public from. And it's like, I still feel like you're kind of missing the point, but okay.
It's like, yes, but you listen to these other issues.
Let's not focus on protecting the public and focus more on, like, reforming the people inside.
The best way, like, what is it? The best offense is a good defense? Or is it the best defense is a good offense? I don't know. It goes both ways, I guess. Yeah. But the best way to protect the public from dangerous people is to help the people become less dangerous.
Exactly.
Before introducing them to the general public.
Yes. Oh, jeez.
This episode is super ranty.
I know.
I feel like we need to go back and like record something for the intro and be like, look, this is a heavily ranty episode.
Can you see why I couldn't get through all of this without...
Yeah, no, this is why this is a...
Yeah.
Yeah, like, there's nuggets of story, but it's a whole lot of ranting.
Okay, so this is the statement they released to the Department of Justice and Congress. Quote, conditions as concern treatment of prisoners at Alcatraz are unbelievably brutal and inhumane, and it is our respectful hope and our earnest position that a proper and speedy investigation of Alcatraz be made so that justice and humanity may be served.
Did that investigation ever happen?
No. However, 3 months after the trial, a woman named Thelma Fleming, who was 28 years old, she was a petite, blonde, young woman, was walking her dog in San Francisco, and she stopped at a vacant lot to pick some wildflowers for her mother. And while she's picking these wildflowers, a large man in an adjacent apartment opens his apartment window and starts yelling at her and says, quote, get out of here or I will kick you out. And this man did not own the lot. And so Thelma is like, fuck you, I'm not leaving. I'm going to pick my flowers. Meanwhile, a woman on the other side of the lot opens her apartment window and says, I planted those flowers. You go ahead and pick as many as you want. And so Thelma's like, I will.
Thanks, sister.
Thank you. So the man comes out of his apartment now and continues yelling at Thelma. Thelma throws her flowers at him. She's like, stop yelling at me. Like, get out of here. And so he punches her in the face. And then he hit her again so hard that it knocked her off of her feet. This hit to the face cut her cheek and chipped 2 of her teeth. So now she's like bleeding everywhere. And like this is the point where he's like, "Oh, let me help you wipe some of that blood." I'm just like, "Get the fuck off of me."
Dude, face and head wounds bleed like a mother trucker.
I know. She's like, "Get the fuck off of me. Where's my dog?" She gets her dog and she leaves and she goes down the street. I guess she knows a doctor that lives down there. And this doctor takes her to the hospital. She gets 5 stitches and one of her eyes is like swollen shut for a little while. This man, meanwhile, just keeps insisting that this was self-defense.
Against a tiny little woman?
Against a tiny woman who threw flowers at him. That man was John F. Gilmore, who was 35, 6'1", weighed 210 pounds, and worked as a guard at Alcatraz. At his trial, this is what the judge said. Quote, before I dismiss this charge, I want you to promise me you will never again raise your fists except to defend yourself. Which I'm like, okay, where was that for, like, literally anyone else? Where was that for Sam? Where was that for, like, I don't know enough about anyone else, but, like, okay, are we just making promises now that we're not gonna do any more criminal acts? And then the judge said, which of course John is like, I will, I promise. And then the judge said, you know, people may be deprived of their freedom, but they still retain personal rights. Which I'm like, duh.
Yes.
Okay, yes. And he said, your actions reflect something in your character that you should correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
There's
then
not much.
That was it.
There's nothing keeping him on the guard side.
And I'm like, so what? Like, so why does he literally beat the shit out of a woman for picking flowers. Why the fuck does he get off with a, don't do that, promise me you're not going to do that again?
Well, he's obviously already messed in the head.
Yeah. Correct your behavior and promise me you won't do that again. And also, here, I'm going to hand you back all of this power that you have over
other people.
hundreds of other men.
The thing too is that like, oh, he has this power, this all-consuming power over these other people, and he thinks he has that over everyone. And that's why there's so many instances of things like police brutality. There's like the like, oh, it's no surprise that, you know, the class bully either became a criminal or a police officer.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, I wish you could say, too, that it's like, oh, well, he didn't have, you know, a criminal history. It's like, well, that other guy also didn't have a criminal history, and he got life in prison for Whitey. He didn't have a criminal history, and he got life in prison for fucking robbery. He didn't get a promise me you won't do this again and correct your behavior. Like, the justice system is so fucked up, and then Whitey gets stuck in a place where he's probably psychologically tortured.
So damaged.
And it anyways. So, public outrage about the conditions at Alcatraz died down almost immediately, and the trial was more or less forgotten about.
I mean, what year was this?
42.
Yeah, there was some other
other stuff going on.
There was a few other things taking up the headlines in the 1940s.
Henry Young was immediately sent back to solitary after the trial, which I assume means the dungeon. Mm-hmm. A year later, he did attempt suicide, but he was found in time and saved. And there was no investigation ever done. And just as we know from last week's episode, just people continued to feel trapped and hopeless, and like they had no other options than to risk their lives and die trying to get out, because living in torture is not justice for your crimes.
That's why I was legitimately questioning, like, as much as the thought of drowning terrifies me, would that be a worse fate than continuing to exist, not live, but exist at Alcatraz?
Yeah. So, that is my part. I don't know.
That's prequel one. Part 2 of the prequel, it sounds like, because we had a little bit of follow-up. We had an addendum to episode 1, plus an additional story, plus just a crap ton of ranting.
I'm doing this George Lucas style, where you just kind of release episodes in whatever order you want.
Yeah.
And make people figure it out in their brain, the chronological part.
Okay.
But I promise, I swear to everyone, I'm putting it on air, so it has to be true, that next week I will cover what I planned to cover 2 weeks ago.
And the week after that, we're doing a Tell We Tale with a cryptid.
Ooh, okay.
We're getting back to basics.
Great. Then maybe we'll get ahead some.
Maybe.
Because maybe, I don't know, I'm so deep in this. By then all my books will have come, and then I'll come up with a 4th episode to do on Alcatraz, I'm sure.
Perfect.
It'll just be an Alcatraz podcast at that point.
If you want to see pictures from today's episode, you can check out our Facebook and Instagram at the Tales We Tell Podcast. If you want to see pictures but don't do the social media, check out the taleswetellpodcast.com. If you want to get some sweet, sweet swag, check out our Redbubble store. Search The Tales We Tell. We've got a couple different logo designs. You can get that on anything. And if you want to support us, but you don't need the stuff except, shout outs, Dorothy. Some bonus content, our undying love and affection, sometimes some, personal love notes and stickers and stuff. Become patrons at patreon.com. Search The Tales We Tell. And if you've been to Alcatraz and done any of the tours, or, if you've stayed the night at Alcatraz, let us know. We want to hear about it.
We want to hear about it. Get us an in.
Yeah.
Get us an in.
And if you want to send us to Alcatraz for the night,
send us there.
I guess we'll figure out I'm going to look into what all the requirements are. And if it's doable, then
we'll figure out how to get to California.
A petition thing. You can send us to Alcatraz.
Yeah, I guess there's more than just getting to California for it.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
There's a couple of steps, I think.
A couple steps before that, but we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for putting up with my weird hyperfixation for the last couple weeks.
And all of our ranting about prisoner of war.
Oh, and all of our ranting. But I'm glad I have an outlet for it because it's been my whole life for 2 weeks. And I will see you guys next week with, I promise, the originally intended episode. So we'll see you then. Bye.